So, when you're the last child, you always get everything the mother has to give goes to you. So I would say I pretty much have a very good childhood, but there are just some things I will highlight. When you don't know inequality, anything you have is really big to you until you know that inequality exists in the world. So I would act like I don't know what was inequality at this time. So growing up in southern Nigeria, my mom and dad, they didn't have higher education. They were just like, my mom was an housewife and my dad was owned a chemist, like a pharmacy in the local community. So my aunt, my father's younger sister, was the first person to have a college education in my extended family. So everybody in my family wanted me to have like a college education, just like my aunt, because she was successful. She was a lecturer in the Petroleum Institute in Nigeria. So trying to follow the footstep of my aunt means that I had to follow some preordained rules. My aunt was a Christian. She attends an Anglican church. That means I have to become a Christian and also attend an Anglican church. I would say pretty much I'm a Christian by heart and by faith, and I believe in human decency. I grew up as a very conservative kind of political person and very reserved in how change is structured. And that is what I would say about my childhood, is that three things that make up my childhood is that I'm the last in a family of four. I went to college with my aunt and I'm a Christian, and these things have defined how I grew up and who I've become.
I know your parents took you to a traditional Nigerian medicine doctor in hopes of curing you. And then you were forced to undergo an exorcism in a church, which is a piece in the book that I couldn't believe it. So your feelings about that?
So I will talk a little bit about my relationship with religion and how Africans treat religion. So religion plays a big role in the life of any African person, especially West Africans, because due to colonization by the British, we end up adopting most of their lifestyle. And one of the things that define a British colony is how close they are to God. And my mother and father, they were African traditional worshippers in the 90s. I was born in the year 1990. So the formative years of my life, the first 12 years, my parents were worshiping the African traditional gods. But in the year 1990, the December 31st, that night, they said that the world is going to end on the year 2000, January 1st, 2000. So a lot of people ran to churches, houses of worship, to be able to be saved from this end of the world. So after that sermon, my family became Christians. So they were baptized and they became Christians. So Christian religion brought this idea that homosexuality is a sin, because if you date back to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, that Noah welcomed an angel, and the angel led to the destruction of Noah's wife, who looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. If you know religion, you understand what I'm saying. But just a bigger picture-wise, my family became very religious, and the church said that homosexuality is a sin. And since I was gay, I identify as gay, I had to be cleansed of this demonic spirit. So they took me to the church, whereby they would pray, light candles, and do some exorcism to flee the spirit away from you. Because according to the New Testament of the Bible, there was pigs that were possessed by a flu, like a demonic spirit, and they cast it from a human being and they went into a pig or something. So this is the thing that was interesting, is that when they took me to a church and they were praying, my parents do not see that as something that is bad, because according to the Christian religion, that evil spirit, according to the Pentecostal Christian religion, that evil spirit leaves my body. It's not me that is suffering the punishment, it's the evil spirit that is suffering the punishment. So for me, that was very terrifying, and like, that's become a traumatic part of my life when I think about how religion was used to criminalize me instead of to be used to support me. So looking back to that now, I find it really, really intriguing that Western evangelicals who are losing their battle in the West find breeding grounds in countries like Nigeria to propagate hate against a certain group of people like gays and say that they are the cause of the problem. And this is another thing I think that people should know is that Africans are very, very spiritual kind of people. Sometimes if you want to cross a rope, like a rope line where you ankles, you hold it and a woman cannot go under when she's pregnant because it can make her barren. So the idea about demonism is held very strongly. So if your family believe that you are a cause of a problem or their progress, they will support any form of exorcism so that the spirit can leave you so that your family can prosper.
Thank you. When you graduated from college, you moved to the Nigerian capital, Abuja. Is that how you say? Abuja?
Yeah, Abuja.
Where you helped found the International Center for Advocacy on Right to Health, an LGBTQ rights organization, an HIV clinic in 2014. You state in your book that your activism made you a target, and life got considerably harder after that.
Yeah.
People started to hunt you down. You were attacked. How did you find how did these experiences change your resolve to leave Nigeria?
So nobody wants to leave their country. Any immigrant that you see that came to America as a humanitarian migrant, they flee because they had to leave their country. So this is a distinction, is that there are economic migrants and there are humanitarian migrants, people who are fleeing based on persecution. Coming to Abuja, I didn't come to Abuja to come and be an activist. It's just like leaving Westchester and moving to New York to come and find your life. So I came to look for a better life. But when I left my family, coming to Abuja, I just graduated. So I thought that I would have an opportunity to live a better life. So I got a job as a nutritionist. I was working for Family Health International, is a subsidiary of USAID, that's USAID. So I was working with pregnant women who are breastfeeding, and the rate of HIV from rate of HIV transmission from mother to child was high because through breast milk, mothers can transmit HIV if they are not on drug. So while I was doing my work as a nutritionist, I was seeing data in my clinic that the rate of HIV infection among gay men was higher. So if you know statistics, the prevalence for general population was 3.9, but the prevalence for gay men was 29.7. So it's like 26 times higher for gay men, more than general population. And the reason why this discrimination is happening is because in 2013 March, the government of Nigeria passed an health discrimination bill against sexual minorities. That means if you identify as someone who has sex with the same sex, you can't have access to healthcare treatment. So the HIV infection was increasing. Then in January 7th, 2014, I was just in Abuja a few months when the government passed a law that criminalizes same-sex relationship by 14 years imprisonment. And activists and organizations that advocate against the government for same-sex will be imprisoned 10 years imprisonment. Amorphous show of public affection. That means if two people who are suspected to be same-sex walking on the street, they will be persecuted 10 years imprisonment. Cohabitation of same sex, that means if two men are living or two women are living, they will be punishable by 10 years imprisonment. That means zero tolerance against same sex. So what happened is that after that law was passed, non-state actors, that is citizens that do not have the power to take laws, started taking laws into their own hands. For me, I was a victim of mob violence. I was held hostage, I was kidnapped. And do you know what they told me? The guy that I met, I thought it was a gay guy, I wanted to meet him. It took screenshot of all our conversation and told me why I was held hostage in his apartment, that do I want to go to the police, I will face 14 years imprisonment, or I should just give them my phone and the money. So it was like weighing persecution from my government or from an individual. So I gave them money, I gave them my phone, I remained quiet. But in 2016, 2 years after that law was passed, I became the director of International Center for Advocacy on Right to Health, advocating for gay men to have access to healthcare treatment because of this law. So I was given an opportunity to present my research at the World AIDS Conference in South Africa in 2016, July. When I returned from the conference, because of the recognition of my work, I was a victim of a severe mob violence. I was sleeping in my apartment when the community broke the door down. They dragged me out of my apartment. They beat me on the street and they took me for the walk of shame. So the walk of shame is that they tied a bell on my waist. They were clapping and they were singing, "It's gay, we have found out and we're going to kill him." And I blacked out. When I woke up, I found myself in a clinic. I knew I had to leave, but I didn't know where to go to seek protection. So it's like I'm running etta scatter, but I'm running nowhere. So I first had a visa to the UAE because it was easy to get a visa to the UAE. And I traveled to Dubai. I was in Dubai for 2 weeks. I couldn't seek asylum in Dubai because they didn't sign the 1951 Refugee Convention document. And I returned back to Nigeria. I was in hiding. 3 months after that attack, in October, AVAC, the Advocate for Microbial Vaccines in New York, they published my name and photograph as an award-winning grassroots activist for gay men to have access to treatment in Nigeria. When that award went online, I knew that my life was in more imminent danger because of what I suffered 3 months ago. So I said, I have to flee. I was paid salary on the 23rd. On the 24th, I bought a flight ticket. On the 26th, I traveled to Cairo. And from Cairo, I flew to the United States.
Wow. And when you came to America, I know that you must have expected more than what happened at that point. What did you think was going to happen? And can you tell us what happened when you landed?
So let me paint the picture for you clearly.
Yeah.
I was in my office working as a consultant when my names and photographs were published. I just got up from my office because my friend sent me the message, "Hey, Edafe, I saw your picture here. You can't go back home." So I ran to the highway, hailed a cab, took a cab, run into my apartment, throw my bed up, pull out the file that I have my birth certificate, my passport, and a few other documents, ran to the hotel by the airport, stayed in that hotel 2, 3 days, took a flight to Cairo, stayed in Cairo one night, flew into New York. Whew, I was like, I'm safe.
Yeah.
When I got to the border and asked for asylum, I didn't know what was asylum. I told the immigration officer, they stamped for me because I came in with a 2 years visa. They stamped for me to stay in 6 months. I don't have any family or friends in America. I don't know anybody here. So I walked up to the immigration officer and told them that my life is in danger in my own country. I came here to seek protection. And they told me that I'm an asylum seeker. They don't have anywhere to keep me, that I have to sign my deportation before they can move me into the next process of seeking asylum. I don't know what is deportation. So they told me that if I sign the deportation, I'll be returned back to my country. I said, if I sign my deportation, I'm returned back to this country, I'm going to be killed. Why would I do that? The officer now explained to me that the only way they can move me into a hearing is if I sign my deportation proceeding. So I signed the deportation papers and they took me to Elizabeth Detention Center where I started seeking asylum. While I was in Elizabeth Detention Center, I got to know about First Friends. And First Friends gave me uh, the cards and the paper that I can use to write. So I wrote all the legal services that we have there. And Immigration Equality called me. Immigration Equality is in New York. They provide pro bono legal services. And they decided they took my case on. And through Immigration Equality, I got pro bono legal services from David Voice and Plimpton, who represented me. So while I was in the Immigration Detention Center, they said that they're applying for parole for me. So I came in October. So they said, if I'm granted parole, I'm going to leave in December. But they rejected me parole because when Trump won in November, immigration enforcement changed in the landscape in New Jersey. So they were like, you have to have a severe health scare for you to be able to have parole, even though I have a sponsor that would give me a place to stay and support me. So I was denied parole. I applied for asylum in December, and my court was supposed to be in March of 2017. And a week to my court case, the judge said that my court is postponed to April. 8 more weeks is added to my stay. And this is the funny thing about immigration detention. I was in bed 26. Bed 26 in Gulf Dorm was between the lavatory, the toilet, and my bed. So when people are pooping and everything, I'm just the guy there that have to take in all those shit. And I spent 5 months and 14 days in immigration detention center before I was released.
What can you tell us about that experience?
I tried to pretend like it wasn't bad
Mm-hmm.
because it's bad. So immigration detention center, many of you know from outward, they said it's like a jail. It's worse than a jail. Immigration detention center, you don't have access to go outside. The only way we see the outside is just a roof, an opening on the roof that sunlight comes in and go out because it's an abandoned warehouse. We have outdoor recreation. It's like playing volleyball, but it's just an open space, like a room space that the ceiling is open little bit. If snow falls, it can touch you. If rain falls, it can touch you. But on top of that roof is planes that are landing in Newark Airport. So like the entire place is like every few seconds a plane is landing in Newark Airport. So all throughout the night, you feel that noise of the plane shaking back and front and access to food of low nutritional content. They gave us a pizza one day because our room was the cleanest dorm. I didn't know that pizza in America was less than $1, but we're celebrating that we got pizza. Imagine the kind of food we are eating for us to celebrate that we had pizza. And the worst of all is that I didn't come with money, so I need to make some money so I can place phone call or buy commissary to supplement my food. So I was working for the kitchen for $1 a day. I worked 31 days to make $31 to be able to call. And I couldn't call my family because if I call my mother, or if you call somebody from the jail, they will say, this is a call from the US immigration and prison system. So my mother would freak out because she didn't know I was in jail. So it was like a very difficult time of my life, but that experience have taught me that with resilience and grit, you could go through anything. And there's a lot of support I got from First Friend. A lot of people were writing me as pen pal, calling me, visiting, and it made it less difficult compared to what other people go through who spend longer time and do not have anybody there to
Yeah,
support
those
them.
were lovely. In your book, you talk about those meetings that were like life-saving moments for you when you walked out and had people visiting you. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, so when I came to America, before anybody visited me, all people call me was either my alien number or my bed number. So Lillian, the visitor from First Friend, she was the first person that called me by my name. Name means a lot to people. Like
Mm.
everything we buy is based on a brand name. And you just lose your name to a number, it
Mhm.
makes you feel like you're not worthy of anything. And Lilia comes and say, hey, I'm looking for Edafe. And I'm like, I'm Edafe. I don't know her from Adam, but she sat with me. She discussed about America. She was a Liberian. She's good in Europe, how she wrote later with her family. And she started exchanging letters with me as my pen pal. And she described the snow, the day it fell in December, Christmas holiday, people exchanging gifts, the new year, what it's like outside. So through letters, I was like, I felt hopeful that when I come out to America, these are the things I will see. So I think that the visitor from First Friend was one of the most important part of my experience in that detention center. It made me feel like I had family, even though I was in this cage.
That's incredible. That you found that support. And then you were set free, and you soon persuaded the leaders of the RDJ refugee shelter in Harlem, named after homeless advocate Robert Daniel Jones, to turn the shelter into a full-time transitional nonprofit that offers transitional refuge for migrants fleeing violence and persecution abroad, like you did. What is that experience like for you every day? It must be so rewarding, but it must also be so personal for you.
You know, they say to nonprofit leaders, Work so hard, don't get any reward in return financially. But one thing about serving people, it helps you to be a better person. And that is something I have learned as the director of a refugee shelter, is that a lot of the refugees that come to America, UNHCR says it takes 17 years averagely to resettle in this country. And one thing people forget is that when you help somebody else, it gives you a sense of not just purpose, but the privilege you have, and makes you feel grateful for any little thing you have. And that is one thing I have learned being the director of a refugee shelter, is that when people come into this country and don't have anything and have to sleep in the basement of the church, it's not like I am happy that I'm doing better than them, but it reminds me that would I have been better off if nobody else can provide our services for them and they have to sleep on the street of Newark Penn Station like I did when I just came to America? And when I look at that, I'm like, I'm grateful I'm able to provide this space for them, but I'm more grateful that I'm able to get up from my feet and do something with my life for other people. It gives me a sense of like rejuvenated purpose every day, knowing that this thing I'm doing is benefiting other people as well as myself. I am very selfish. I will tell you, being the director of a shelter is a very selfish move for me, because when I came to America, I was on the board of First Friend. I was going around speaking to people. I saw that one major problem people don't want to face is social services. People like activism. They want systematic change, but they don't want to give their dollar to somebody to help them move from point A to point B. So I saw that there's a gap in the way we provide social services, and that was why I decided to create a space like that. But full-heartedly, I'm an activist. And as an activist, I like to see systemic change. But it's also good that while you're waiting for systemic change to happen, people don't die.
Wow. That's a really good, it seems like a good time to move on to your book, just because of everything you're saying about compassion. In your book, you write that in order for a person to make an impact on the world, they must have a just cause, like you just described. And you say, when you have a just cause, you can abandon everything else. Why, may you ask? Because you know the purpose of what you are fighting for, which is exactly what you just talked about.
And
What
also, when you
inspired?
have a job, when you have a just cause, when the going get tough, you are reminded that this is why I started in the beginning.
Absolutely. So well, obviously you have so much that inspired you to write this book. Was there one specific thing that prompted you to write about using your civil power to create change and inspire young people?
No, there's a lot of things. I remember when I was younger, as a gay person, I never saw somebody that was courageous enough to show me somebody like me out there. And in our generation and the generation under us, we are the most selfish generation in terms of individualism. The generations before, prior to us, they are very group oriented and like teamwork oriented, but we are very narcissistic, and we are very focused on ourselves and what we can benefit from anything we engage in. So that was a driving force, is that while we think about ourselves, we should also think about the collective good of the group. So compassion is what more is half of the entire topic. The other half is, what is it worth more? It's worth more than hate. It's worth more than homophobia that almost killed me. It's worth more than the war we fight over who should control trade. It's worth more than the war we fight about if we should be uh, um, um, a socialist country, a communist country, or if we should be a country that is focused on the 1%. So compassion is looking introspectively more than thinking about, hey, this is what that person is doing, is playing me fault or something like that. So because we always complain and make it look at this person is causing the problem. So look inside, what are the privileges you have? I came to America with nothing, but I have a place I live in on the Upper West Side. I'm doing okay financially. If I average the 1% of my age group in the world, I'm among the 1% by living in America and New York City alone. So would I cut the opportunity for other people that are coming after me because I've already been able to get into it? So compassion is what more is encompassing that introspective look into our lives and why we are preventing other people to get the opportunities we had that made our life better.
You talk about human bridges in the book. You describe how people should strive to become one. Can you define a human bridge and tell us the difference between that and compassion,
Yeah.
or the link to?
So a human bridge is not an inanimate bridge. A human bridge is a bridge that helps connect between, help people. In definition, a bridge helps you cross an unsurmountable obstacle you couldn't have crossed on your own. So being a human bridge is helping somebody cross an obstacle they wouldn't have been able to cross on their own. Compassion is knowing the person have the problem. Being a bridge is helping the person solve the problem. For example, refugees are fleeing persecution. We know that they are fleeing persecution. We are compassionate to their struggle, isolation, loneliness. These are things they struggle because they don't have a family here. But being a bridge is like, I have a family. This person doesn't have a family. Can they join me for Thanksgiving? Helping them bridge that gap of isolation, fear, despair. That is what human bridges are. We help people who do not have the opportunities we have to be able to cross an obstacle they wouldn't have been able to cross on their own.
And you talk about dialogue being very important in terms of building human bridges. How can we, everyone on this conversation, build a constructive dialogue with people whose views may not agree with our own?
This, I'll quote a quote from Richard Nixon. It's kind of funny that I'm quoting Richard Nixon at this time. Always remember, others may hate you, but those who hate you don't win unless you hate them, and then you destroy yourself. Life teaches us many things, but it is our choice to apply those teachings. Let's take, for example, we want democracy, but we should remind ourselves that we cannot have democracy and limit free speech. We cannot try to enforce our values on others and tell them not to do the same. It's a foolish game of tit for tat. We need an opportunity for people we want to hear us, to feel their heads to. And the only way we can do that is by listening before we speak. No matter how irritated you might be, we need to put our personal hurts behind us and find common ground. If we are not able to do that, we cannot create change, because change is not only meant for one side of the eye, it's meant for both sides of the heart. So let's take this, for example. Take the figure 8 or the infinity symbol. At these two ends of the symbol is high polarity. If you have to trade an object into the figure 8, when the object moves to this end or this end, it maintains its highest frequency of polarity. For us to reduce that polarity, we either reduce the figure 8 so that the object flows faster, or we increase the frequency at which the object flows from one end of the figure 8 to the other end of the figure 8. That is physics. But in life, we still apply principles of science. That means for us to harness our opportunities of the differences we have between the right and the left, we need to either reduce the circles in which we have, like the bubbles we have, or we need to increase the frequency in which we move from being a leftist to a conservative and being in the middle within a fast period of time. Because if we create a bubble on the left or a bubble on the right, we cannot be able to create a change. And creating change requires a bridge. And for you to be that bridge, you have to be compassionate. And if you are compassionate, you will know that the only way you can be compassionate is to listen effectively to the cries of people who are different from you.
So is that the one action that we can all take to begin building human bridges, what you just said?
The first action we can take, if you see in the book I wrote, you have to know what kind of bridge you want to become.
Right, right.
There are bridges that are made of concrete, bridges that are made of wood, bridges that are made of bamboo or rope, or even a single line bridge.
Mhm.
Know that you cannot create all the change in the world, but you can create a single act of kindness that can ripple throughout. Take, for example, when I was visited by Lillian of First Prince of New Jersey and New York, she didn't know I was going to be a crusader speaking about immigration. But she, being kind to me, has made me realize that Americans are kind people. And when I treat other people, I return that kindness. Nobody knew Lillian before. Me talking about her story is a continuation of what that little act of kindness could do. So you can be a rope that connects somebody to a bamboo tree, a bamboo bridge that will lead somebody to a concrete bridge or to a steel bridge. We continue the movement from one place to another. So the best way to start is to find who you are in this picture. And doing that will make you know what you want to become. And knowing what you want to become is having a purpose. And when you have a purpose, when what you want to become becomes difficult, you remind yourself that this is who I am, this is my purpose, and I will continue fighting until I realize who I want to become. So the framework is not just you can pick one and do and say, oh, it's over. Because when the going get tough, that is when you can be able to prove that this mission or vision you have, I will continue remaining consistent. If you don't know who you are or what you want to become, you will lose track even in trying to take the step you want to achieve.
I'd love to spend the next 5 minutes. You and I talked about reading a few sections from the book. And you talk about a revolution in the book. So maybe we want to talk about compassion and a revolution. Why don't we go to maybe page 150, like you said?
Yeah.
And read the conclusion of the book to everybody.
So from the book, the conclusion I drew from the book is very short and I will just read. As I took on the journey to write this book, I discussed the ideas with people and asked for feedback from friends who I admire and are doing the work of compassion. One thing remains constant. The change we seek to have is not going to be a change for one side of this political spectrum in the United States. It's going to be a revolutionary change for all. That is the only way we can achieve it, to bring people together and onboard those who see the world differently. The only ingredient that can make this possible is compassion. This is not about being woke or not. This is about our humanity and our ability to empathize with people who do not see the world the way we imagine, and find ways to either bring them on board one step at a time or find common ground. Radical change is good, but slow change is better than no change. I will end with that.
I also want to end with where you say on page 106, the freedom I enjoy in being an openly gay man is due to my understanding that I have been called a rebel by society and underestimated by many people. This gives me an opportunity to design my life how I choose to bring who I want into my life as family and choose the path that best fits my life. Because I am gay, I have had to question everything I was ever told. And by questioning everything, I have come to be a different person. I have become compassionate, not self-seeking. I am willing to help people and alleviate pain and suffering for as many as I can in the society I live in. I understand that people come from different places and have been shaped by different experiences. I know that I should not use a one-size-fits-all approach to judging people. I came from a very poor background, but I've climbed the ladder of success. This means that I should help people who are struggling, not judge or oppress them. I loved that paragraph. Before we launch into our Q&A, I want to just ask you very briefly, what has freedom meant to you? Your life has changed so much in such a short time. You're experiencing a very difficult administration in America. Just go into just a very brief detail about freedom and what it means to you.
To be truly free is to be a rebel according to society. If you take, for example, if you do a graph, any kind of graph you do, your graph is only complete if everything falls according to the X and Y linear chord in a straight vertical or on horizontal axis from left to right. When something falls in another side, it makes the graph like this. And those one thing can easily be cut off or could make the entire graph to bend towards that thing. So when I came to New York, people told me that you're crazy. What do you think about providing social services for people in a shelter when there's a city shelter? How can you do that? But I said to myself that if I am a survivor, I think surviving, fleeing my country is the hardest thing I could do. There's nothing else I couldn't do after taking just a little bag, leaving everything behind to be considered a rebel. To be free is to really, really accept the fact that anything and everything is worth nothing if you are not ready to take on the bags that comes with what we quote unquote call freedom.
Thank you. So now we're going to take a few questions. We can do this two ways, everybody. In your participant box, you should have an option to raise your hand. Do you have that option? If you don't, or you're not sure, you can either put your question in the chat box, or you can let us know, and we'll read your question. Pam Bolton has one. Pam, would you like to ask your question out loud, or would you like us to read it?
Sure, I can ask it out loud. Edafe, thank you for sharing your experiences. My question is about more the day-to-day of your life now as leading this shelter. What's the group there like? What challenges do some of the residents share with you? And also, how long do people tend to stay there? And what helps them move out?
So it's a very good question. Thank you very much for that question. One thing with providing social services is always how do people move from A to B? And as someone who have experienced homelessness, I think that one thing that has been consistent with everybody is that if there is a very good motivation, people want to progress. I have been an example to a lot of the people that stayed in the shelter. I tell them that I know that taking a job that is paying you minimum wage is not as attractive as wanting to have a job whereby you can use your degree from your foreign country and so on. So I always advise people you have to start from somewhere and build from there on. When I came to New York the first time, I had to move to Jersey City. I stayed in Jersey City for some time, took a job in New Jersey before I came back to New York City when I could afford it. So people come from different parts of the world. The last time I checked, it's 41 different countries people have come from, and they come for a variety of reasons. People stay between 3 to 6 months. A few outliers have stayed 12 months, about 3 people. One of them, she was trans and could not access the city shelter system. Another one, the family of a victim of kidnapping in their country, child abuse. So we had to save money for him to bring his family out. When it's time for people to move, the case manager developed like a plan for people to process out. So it involves, are we going to make a down payment for this person, or has this person worked enough money to move out on their own? Furnishing apartments, we don't do it. We work with collaborative organizations like Root Refuge in Brooklyn. So it's more about cooperation and collaboration to get people out of the space as quick as possible, since it's a transitional shelter. And when I started, it was just me. Now we are 8 staffs there, 3 full-time and 5 part-time. And we have 1 full-time case manager and 2 part-time case managers. So the case managers are looking for resources in the city, affordable housing, spaces where people want to lease and they will take a reduced amount, um, agents that don't need credits, and so on. So it's just all about making a plan and motivating them to fulfill or follow the plan. My day-to-day activities have changed from helping people to follow those plans or case managing to just being a director. And having 8 people to manage is all about doing HRO, community relation, writing grants, reports, and just steering the direction between our board and community relationships. So I'm no longer involved in day to day, but I do sometimes when I go down there and see what is happening. Like Bindia is there, you can tell. I get involved with like volunteer coordination when we want to organize dinners or community events, picnics, and things like that.
Wow, thank you. Maybe if Holly, if I could ask one follow-up question.
Sure.
Where do you draw the majority of your funding? You did mention writing grants, which I am sure is a part of your day-to-day.
When I started, I think I had a grant from Trinity, but our funding is diversified. 26% of our funding is individual donation. Our budget used to be around 55,000 when I just came there, but now our budget is more than $500,000. So majority of our funding is from foundational grants. So do you want me to list the names of the organization? It's a lot. So,
No, that's fine. That's fine.
so
I was just wondering between government, if you had, for example, state or federal
yeah,
funding, or if it's primarily private, which sounds like it's the latter.
so 51% is private foundations, 26% is individual donation, about 15% is our annual gala and fundraisers that are hosted by individuals. 11% is from government because we get funding for our food program and also city discretionary funding for 2020 we got for immigration.
Wow, thank you. It's a big job.
Yeah, managing government funding is the worst. I prefer to do private and foundational funding because even the 11% I get from the government, the paperwork, the reporting, and the agency to do that, it takes more than what it takes me to get private foundational funding.
Thank you.
Edafe, we have a question from Terry Toll in the chat box. Terry, would you like to speak to Edafe and go on video, or speak from there, or would you like me to read your question? We can't hear you. I'm happy to read your question. Oh, there you are. Hi, Terry. I think you're on mute, though.
How now?
Here you go. There you go. Yep.
Okay. Right. Okay. I'm just in awe, Edafe, of your strength and your positivity and your resolve. You are a phenomenal human being.
Thank you.
My hat's off to you. And I wish you all the best as you proceed in this magnificent work that you're doing. I wanted to ask you a question about the dialogue that you're promoting and advocating. Right now, many of us feel it's impossible to dialogue with those that we differ from and those we wish would change their minds and their actions. And I wanted to ask you, what are your parameters for who to dialogue with and who not? Because what it feels like, for me at least, is if there is any dialogue, it's just talking at each other. There's no penetration of the issue. And you were almost killed by a terrible mob. Would you want to enter into dialogue with them? Could you
Yes.
share with us what your parameters for who you dialogue with and who you don't?
Thank you very much, Cherry. That's a very important question. So I've done a lot of media for Nigerian media, and people write on the comments, "Fagot, you're going to die. Your mother is a fool." They like insult me and things like that. I don't read comments anymore on social media. They're too much. People are like, "Oh my God," people are keyboard warriors and the rest. So I was away from my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for 6 weeks, between second week of August to third week of September. I wrote a post for Thomson Reuters Foundation on clicktivism and activism with social media. So with my experience recently is that social media is not a good place to dialogue, because dialogue involves to your body movement. That is non-verbal cues as much as verbal cues. So if I want to have a conversation with you and you start speaking and my face is like this, I'm telling you that I don't want to listen to what you say. What you're saying is a lie. When you're done, I'm going to tell you what the truth is. And the person will be defensive to when you speak to. So my parameters for dialogue is that social media is not the best place to dialogue. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, they bring the worst of all of us. When you are trying to force things down the throat of another person, that person would never listen. If I have a disagreement with somebody, especially my partner's family, most of them are Republicans. When we dialogue on Facebook, we fight. Everything we fight. But when we meet for Thanksgiving, Easter, or anything, they listen. Because when I come, maybe they are thinking that Edafe is coming to attack us because of what happened on Facebook over 2 weeks ago before Thanksgiving. But when I come, I'm quiet and they're asking me, "You don't want to speak? You don't like what is happening in the conversation today?" And I'm like, "I'm okay. I just want to be reserved or something." They start trying to find some way to make me comfortable. I'm their in-law. They don't want to like upset me or something. Why they are trying to find ways to make me comfortable, they start speaking as if they are liberals, and I know fully well that they are going to vote against my right to be gay or marry another man. So this is something I have learned, is that sometimes the conditions around the argument makes it heated, because you don't want to give up when another person that is voting for a Republican with you is there and knows that if you give up, if you go back, it's going to be a big fight. So the best way to dialogue is individual, one-on-one, in an unthreatening space that gives you both the opportunity to argue without emotions and to speak based on the issue. And immediately that issue is done, I go back. So according to how I dialogue, there are Nigerians who are against anti-gay and they are strong Christians. I have had dialogue with them on social media, on like a private messenger, and I'm speaking to them about Christianity. I'm a pastor talking about religion and everything. And they start saying things that are hypocritical. And I turned back on them and said, "Remember 2 weeks ago, you asked me about homosexuality and you said this thing. And look at what you are saying now about adultery. Don't you think it's against the standard of religion?" But at that moment when they wanted to argue with me about homosexuality, I did not engage with them. But now they are talking about adultery in a favorable manner or rape, and I start bringing homosexuality, and they become defensive. And I'm like, "I don't want to threaten you. I just want to point out to you that what you said 2 weeks ago was hypocritical, and you could learn from that." So I think that the way we try to engage in dialogue sometimes is matters more than what we engage in that dialogue. Don't fight with people over social media, because everybody there is just outrightly keyboard warriors. And when we get those people you argue with on social media, if you meet them in a physical space, You'll be so lively and friendly and like, oh, I'm sorry, it's just social media, I have to take my stance because so I don't know. If you stay like the experiment I did, the 6 weeks I was off social media, I was seeing humanity in people. I was seeing somebody hand over something to another person on the street, a car stop for people to walk past. I'm like, oh my God, people are so kind. But when I go on social media, I'm like, the world is going to end tomorrow. So I think that our polarity has been widened by the anonymity that social media possess. And some people that you argue with in social media, they're living in Sudan, South Korea, they don't know anything about American politics. And they're just riling us up, making us feel more defensive and making us feel like the world is going to come on fire.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point about social media, but many of us would like to engage neighbors in discussion, and because we have to live with these people, we don't. And I just wondered if you had any pointers.
So I would say this. This is what I always say when I preach in the church, but I will say it here. Why we wallow in despair of what is happening right now, let us all consider one thing, that our precious democracy is still intact. But when we try to engage in conversations of democracy, we shouldn't show people how democratic or liberal we are. We shouldn't tell people how democratic or how liberal we are. We should show them. By showing people, this is like, I want to say, don't tell me you're a good Christian. Show me you're a good Christian. Because by showing people, it ends up changing their heart more than preaching to people about how to change. You cannot change your neighbor's heart over something that they don't want to change. If you engage in conversation with them, they'll become more defensive and they'll see you as an enemy instead of a change agent. Take, for example, if you're in a relationship with somebody and the person is doing a bad behavior, maybe the person is using drugs, and you want to convince them to change their habit about using drug. You as the partner, if you attack them all the time, they become defensive and start seeing you as an enemy instead of somebody that is supportive. What do? You tell them to call a therapist, that if you speak to a therapist, the therapist might be able to help them, and you are there to support them. Indirectly, the idea you have to give to them will be given to them by somebody else. And when they come back to you, you wouldn't say, I told you, but you will say, I'm here to support you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edafe. We do have one last question in the chat box from Ngozi in Nigeria. I'm just wondering, you did address some of this. Unfortunately, Ngozi, you might have had a bad connection during that conversation, but Edafe, would it be possible to drop in your email so that Ngozi, or the organizations, I mean, email? No? You want to just briefly, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Just
So number one thing is that it's very difficult for people to contact me because I screen the amount of emails I get every day. So if you want to contact me, if you go to my website or my organization website, there are ways to contact people. Also, I just remembered something about what Terry said. You know what a professor advised me when I was in college? He said, if you want to change your parents' ideologies about finance, buy them a finance book that is very interesting and funny. Give it to them and say, oh, I read this book, I like it. When they read it and they like the ideas there, then you say, oh, can we discuss about that book you read about finance? And that opportunity will be a way to engage in finance with your dad, who is a reckless spender. So I think that if you want to change your neighbor, buy them a subscription of the New York Times, Fat Matters, or buy them a book about immigration for them to read. Something like that.
That's good advice. Thank you, Edafe. You've taught us so much today to keep up hope, never give up, especially during these difficult days that we're all going through. And we're so grateful that you came to speak to us. And Jamel, I want to give a shout out from our organization, Neighbors for Refugees, for helping us with the technical side. I'm sorry about the issues at the beginning of the conversation. That hasn't happened to me yet, so there's always a first for a big blowout during a Zoom conversation. We had one. I want to remind you all to buy Edafe's book. Again, I can't recommend it more. It's a wonderful read and it's so inspiring. And we also have another refugee chat coming up on October 29th. You can all find out about it at neighborsforrefugees.org. We're bringing in a Holocaust survivor and a Syrian refugee and someone from Hayes. And that'll be a very interesting conversation too. So thank you, Edafe. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Everyone, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
very,
much
very
for being
much.
here.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for doing this.
Bye.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Jamel. Thank you so much, Edafe.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Yeah, I leave now.
You can leave. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Rosie.
Ngozi, thank you for joining us from Nigeria and anyone else who joined us from far away.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Ellen. All right, everyone, have a good day. Thank you, Terry, for your great question.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye.